All right, it's another episode of the RSL Random Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Brandt, joined by Tyler Thomas tonight, and also Allen Chapman from Pro Referee. And one of the things we're going to do is it's another part of our hard-hitting expose on why we love refs so much.
So hard-hitting. Welcome, Alan. We're so glad to have you on board tonight.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am the official ref lover on our podcast. I love refs.
That's awesome.
So,
you have any background in refereeing?
Just church ball, and
Okay.
so I would volunteer to go do church ball, and we were involved with a little rec league here for a while, and I love doing that. But I don't think people.
He always fouled me out of the games, Alan. He purposely picked games I was playing.
It tells me a lot about you, Tyler.
And it fouled me out.
Don't hack. Don't hang.
Move your feet. Move your feet.
Exactly.
No hands.
No, I'm a center back. I'd rather hit him with my body, right? Like, I mean, back in the day. But Alan, tell us a little bit about like how you came to refereeing, if you don't mind. Like, we know you're a player and that you had a pretty good career in playing, but like, how did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, it was. So the shortest story is one of my buddies that I was playing with in Arizona was starting a club, and in doing so, he needed some officials, some referees, and he offered to pay for several of the guys we played with to get certified. And so I was like, all right, I'll look into this, and went to a clinic, got the laws of the game, which I had never really read as a player, as a coach. And I'm like, yeah, it clicked. I was like, I was very passionate as a player and a coach, and I got myself in trouble a lot. So I was like, this is the path forward for me to help the game that I love. And so, I got in a little bit, found that I enjoyed it, met the right people. I obviously had to, bridge some relationships that I had previous to becoming a referee with some referees and the administrators down in Arizona, and they were great. They accepted me. They knew it wasn't personal, and I was just very passionate. So, and they helped me. They guided me. Had great friends, coming up, refereeing together, and then I just happened to go to a youth tournament, youth regionals in Aurora, Colorado, and Kevin Stott, who you should know, was the head mentor for the tournament. He saw me. He liked what he saw. He talked to the administrators, and it just took off from there. So, yeah.
Oh, nice. So Kevin Stott got you your first real break, huh?
Yeah, well, you got to be seen by the right people that, know people, and he was the right person. So
nice. That's good to hear.
Before we get too far, you just mentioned you played soccer and had a storied career, I'm sure. But one of the reasons I like to ask this question is, like, are you a soccer fan? And you've already said you are a fan of the game. I was reading an article, some information about Ted Unkel, who recently retired.
Yeah.
And he brought it up that he wasn't a soccer fan. He was more of a baseball fan.
Baseball, yeah.
I found that really fascinating. So we've talked to other folks that are in the industry, and being involved in the game at different levels changes the way they approach the game. So are you still a soccer fan? And do you have any teams you follow anywhere?
I'm still a fan. Not as much as I was. I've been around it so much. And, as an official, you see the bad side sometimes of the game. And so, it's nice for me personally to take a break because I'm so consumed with it during the season. I don't particularly follow one club. I enjoy watching U.S. players do well in Europe or other places. I'm a blue collar fan, a underdog fan. I like to see the upsets. I love to see, champions being humbled, especially, if they're that arrogant type, of club. So yeah, I don't know. It's uh it's kind of transitioned through my life. I used to be a crazy sports fan, not just soccer, but all sports. And once you get a family and a wife, you're like, you tend to calm down. I did anyways. So I wanted that happy harmony, home. So I had to cut back on my passion for the sports.
Yeah, how did that transition happen, Alan? I'd love to hear some insight on that.
The transition from being a crazy sports fan to not so much.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned crazy. I mean, do
Yeah.
you have a good story from your playing days,
Well,
or?
no, well, I've plenty of red cards. I got on referees plenty of time, especially when I did learn the laws. I was like, when they didn't apply the laws correctly, I was like, and I think that is the one thing that helped me as a player and a coach when I was transitioning. Once I knew the laws, to actually use that on the field, actually kind of uh, helped me because the referees couldn't hide anymore. They like, this guy knows what he's talking about, type of thing. So, um, no, I grew up in New Mexico, blue collar, small town, didn't play on a club, played high school soccer, played even high school football, basketball, baseball. So I played multiple sports. It's just that blue collar life where, we didn't have a lot going on and sports was, where our excitement was. So that was the beginning, is just being around it so much, and being beat down a lot when you're in a small town, when you're going to these big tournaments, we would go against big tournaments in Albuquerque or Las Cruces or some of these other, big cities in New Mexico. We got pummeled, but her team just fought, and it was just that mentality: never quit, never die, just mentality. So that's where it came from.
And New
Nice.
Mexico's a
Oh, sorry. So how'd you end up in Arizona from New Mexico to Utah?
So my 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 wife, we were relocated to Arizona. Her job was relocated, so that's what moved us to Arizona. We were there for 13 years before we moved up here into Utah. So
and New Mexico's a pretty big soccer state, right? Has a pretty good history.
well, there's moments, they now have the USL club. I don't follow them very much. I've been away from New Mexico so much. They used to have the University of New Mexico,
The men's team got
University. Yeah, they made
the
it
Lobos.
final. Yeah, I actually played for the head coach, Jeremy Fishbein, when he coached University of New Mexico. I played for him at Fort Lewis College, up in Durango, Colorado for a year. So a little bit of ties there. So, there's some quality. I wouldn't consider a hotbed. I haven't been around. I can't make that determination anymore, but
I'm only bring it up because Trey Fitzgerald is from New Mexico as well.
okay.
So
And
there's
Devin Sandoval, right? He played for RSL for a
Yeah,
while.
Devin, Devin. Yeah, I remember
Okay.
Devin was, yeah, we crossed paths quite a bit. Yeah.
so what's the process? How do you become a professional ref? And maybe you've been an MLS pro ref since 2011, doing MLS games since 2011.
I was a fourth official in 2011. 2012 was my first year actually blowing the whistle, being a senior referee. So this would be the start of I count from 2012. So this would be my 14th year, going into my 14th year.
So how did you end up the pro ref? You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but is there?
So I got certified, and back then you start out youth soccer, and eventually get into some amateur soccer. Um, and it's just upgrading. Back then, they call it grassroots now. Back then, it was a grade 8 referee. And then you just worked your way down, which was the way up. So grade 7, 6, 5, and so forth. So I started when I was 30, so I was relatively late. And that kind of impacted my career as far as being a potential FIFA official, because back in the day, you had to retire from the FIFA panel when you were 45, but that's changed since. So it took me 6 years. I started in 2005, and then 2011 was my first. I was doing the Women's League 2010, the WPS, I think it was called back then, Women's Professional Soccer League, and then some second division matches. So yeah, obviously you do some college too, which is separate. High school is separate. So it was just one of those where you have, when you upgrade, you have to do a certain number of games. You have to do a certain number of assessments where an assessor comes out, and grades you and either approves your performance or not. So yeah, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of traveling to go do games.
And is that hard, Alan? Because it seems like as a referee, like everybody has feedback for you, right? Like everybody's like, "Oh, that was not this, that was that," and like you got to go with what you saw, of course. But like, how is it when it's coming from like another referee? Is that different? You don't have to argue, or how does that kind of play out?
Oh yeah, we in our meetings we have pro has meetings once, twice a month, depending on the month, and we dissect some key match incidents. And yeah, we don't always agree.
Oh, good. That's good to know.
Yeah, I think, and we've had moments where clubs have come, either general managers or coaches have come into our meetings and actually see, how our meetings go, and they're actually surprised at how we push each other to get better and, try to be as consistent and top performing as we can. So it's not like we're definitely don't. Well, there's that competition too, part of it where, we want to be on the next best game. And so, yes, we push each other to be better, but there's also that competition part of it that's goes along with being in any profession. You want to be on the field, it's like the players that are starters, the ones that are on bench, they want to be on the field, so on and so forth. So, yeah, we hash things out quite well, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree.
Well, with that in mind, do you have like a least favorite rule then, like a least favorite thing that you feel like you have to call but you really don't want to?
And Tyler's hoping you say handball.
No, I want the long range distance shot where the guy ducks to not like.
He's still mad about that call.
Onside.
I'm like, no, that's the best part of soccer. Like, don't take it away. I don't care what the guy did. If he was
a great goal. Yeah, the goalkeeper is not even going to save it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, but anyway,
I'm with you on that. I'm a purist. I like the game to flow. I like to see goals. Obviously, we want to protect players. We want to protect the game. We also want to let the game entertain. We want to see fans out there enjoying themselves. We want to see players enjoying themselves. So and demonstrating their skills that they have. So yeah, I'm with you. The offside, that one interfering, like if in doubt, just allow the goal. That's unless you're
I'm with you on that. That's great.
Unless there's clear impact, handball is always going to be it's always changing. The interpretation of what's a handball, what's not.
Right. From when you were a kid, it was like if it touched your hand, ref was like, but now it's like,
which is wrong. Those are just officials that, thought they understood the interpretation of a handball. And they're like, anytime it hits it, it's handball. I would like to see the handball where there's clear impact. Sometimes a player goes to ground to brace themselves, right? And it's natural to kind of brace your fall. But if a player who's playing the ball, say they're slotting across the goal mouth, and there's no one there, right? Maybe there's
Exactly.
defenders. Like, why are we giving him a free shot on goal?
Yeah.
When it's going to a defender, or those type of things. It just kind of bothers me. So I would like to include an impact in a handball. Like, is that shot on goal? Is that pass going to go to someone? Obviously taking consideration, is it natural, or is it deliberate? All these things come into play.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. Talk, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the natural versus deliberate, because man, when I play soccer, my hands are all over the place. Not over my head, but I'm a big dude, so I'm always moving my arms to help balance me and stuff. But I'm old now, but like these, like it seems normal to me, but they're like, nah, that's clearly outside of normal. So I don't know how.
I think that's where the impact. I think there's also, I think players see things a little bit different than referees. And as a former player, I'm one, like, I use some common sense. There's the ones, obviously, you say your teammate goes to clear the ball and say your arms are above your head, right? So it's unnatural, but your teammate's trying to clear it and it hits your hand. Like, why would he handle a ball that teammate's trying to clear? So a little bit of common sense. You also have to be consistent, in how you apply it. So, obviously, if it's above your shoulders, or slightly away from the body, or not slightly, like quite a ways away from your body, you run the risk of a handball. And that's, for me, the impact. Like, if there's a shot on goal or pass and you got it too wide, you got your arms too wide, then I think that's the impact that you're having for having your arms out unnaturally. So
Yeah, I think there was one, maybe it was last year, where the ball skipped out of the box. The defender was going and he just put his arm up to start to run. No one was on that side of the field. The cross was to nobody, and the defender just kind of slipped a little bit, and his arm was out, and he hit it, and it was penalty. And I was like, oh, that's the worst penalty ever. But like you said,
I wouldn't want that in a final. Like, when I think of that, I'm like, do I want, let's say it's a final, do I want the final to end on such a
goal like that?
I'm looking for clear handballs. If there's doubt, I usually stay away from them. Like, obviously I have to apply what my company is telling me, have performance reviews and stuff. So I have to obviously take that in consideration. It will change again. So
you brought that up, and we've talked a lot about this. Refs not wanting to have an effect on the game. And I go back and forth on this, being an RSL fan, and the Aurelian Collin not getting his second yellow in 2013 when he should have. But the ref probably didn't want to have an effect on the game. But by choosing not to have an effect on the game, he had an effect on the game. And I know it's a fine line, but any thoughts on that, kind of where that direction? Like, can you?
You want, second yellows have to be clearer. I think most people accept, not most, I think generally most people want two teams to play 11v11, right? And if you have someone that's on a yellow, you need to make sure you're stone cold on a second yellow. And sometimes players put themselves in situations that, they run the risk of the second yellow. And you have to take, for me, it's context of the whole match, as far as applying the laws consistently, fairly for both teams. Whether you decide to manage a situation where it's gray, or you have a gray decision between yellow and red, where's the game at? Is the game at a kind of a heated situation where I need to bring this game, more under control? Or is it everyone's playing and, everyone's respecting the game? And now I have an orange card and I'm like, okay, yellow's the way to go. Most officials, I would say, are are timid on bringing the second, but the good ones, I think, understand when it's needed and when it's not.
So when are you going to give somebody a?
Everyone's not everyone's going to be happy with your decisions.
Well, we were joking around a little bit ago on the podcast. We were talking about when somebody's going to actually make a name for themselves and give a second yellow to a goalkeeper for time wasting a second time in a match. You know, like that's one of those things, like you're saying, like, come on, just kick the ball, man. Like we're pausing time.
Or the 6-second rule, you know.
Right.
No
that was there
one
for a while.
applies that, yeah. It's tricky, and I lose my voice sometimes, like goalkeepers. And there's some practices that we've kind of gone to, obviously trying to talk to them on a dead ball, talking to the coaches, making sure they're aware that or defenders trying to help, get a center back to help me work with the goalkeeper and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of management going into that. And to your point, maybe if someone just gives a second yellow, then the rest of the goalkeepers get, think twice when that official's refereeing their game.
Yeah, word to get around real quick, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We had a keeper, David Ochoa, who would love to get a yellow early in the game, and then he pretty much had free reign the rest of the game because he wasn't going to get that second yellow.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, about having an effect on the game, what about the team side? Because it seems like teams like Kansas City with Peter Vermees, and there's some others that look like they have the opinion, we're going to go out there and just play hard and foul because we're going to put on the ref to change the game. And we're just going to keep fouling and fouling and fouling because they aren't going to be punished for most of the fouls.
And then we're going to yell at the ref so much that he doesn't want to call fouls on us because then he's going to have to explain everything because we're going to be so on top of him. At least that's how it seems, Alan. We don't know Peter Vermees, but we've sat behind him, behind the bench a few times and heard him at RSL games. So small sample size, but, speak to that if you would.
Peter's a great guy. Yeah, I've only had good experience with Peter, especially he's been around the longest, I think, at any club. I wouldn't say, I don't think he's tactically he's out there just trying to foul. Maybe there's certain games that I haven't seen where he's trying to break up play, and that's part of football, and it's part of the referee's job to recognize that and deal with it. But I think generally he likes to play the game the right way, his club, his team. There's some really good players that come through Sporting Kansas City, good guys. And there's been some difficult ones too. So they're very detail oriented. So they'll work you. You got to make sure you're on top of your game, especially the time wasting, especially the delays of the game. And I think he's a big fan of, the yellow cards for players standing in front of the ball or kicking the ball away. I think that's impacted the league and the game in a better way for the game to flow. So now you've seen players, obviously they'll take their yellows when they need to tactically, but they're, for the most part, they're letting the game flow. And that's what we as referees want to see. That's what the fans want to see. They want to see the ball in play and the game flowing. So Peter can be tough. Peter can be tough, but let me tell you what, as long as you show respect and I've had a long career and I've been around Peter a lot. He shows the referees respect most of the times I've had interaction with him. So
that's good to hear.
It doesn't appear that way. So that's good to know. And perhaps you should ask a question.
Well, the other, Pablo's he used to be one of the more difficult, and how he's changed a lot and for the better, I think.
Well, perhaps I could ask a question without singling out a team, but it just seems like some teams have a philosophy where they're kind of like Hack-a-Shack, where they're going to play a little more physical, knowing that the odds are the refs are just going to go, hey, this is how they play. right? Where other teams that may try and play a little more fluid, and then you can break up a team that's playing a little more fluid if you're a little more physical. So
For sure. That's, you don't see that with Inter Miami because the players respect Messi too much. But if I was a coach, that would be maybe one of my tactics.
Hacking Messi.
Yeah, but then the league's not going to be happy. The fans aren't going to be happy. He's not going to be happy. So it's our job to recognize that the consistent fouling, and usually those are the teams that are struggling, that aren't in form, and then you have a team that maybe is in form or has some skills or some speeds, that they need to kind of eliminate or try to slow down. So yeah, if you're doing your job right, you'll recognize that. I don't watch all the RSL games, so I can't speak to all the officials and how they handle those. But yeah, it's part of the game.
Go ahead,
it happens. We just have to be on top of our game as referees.
I'll just say that one of the things that we've done with our podcast the last few years is try and keep track of how many games where an official hasn't had an actual impact on the outcome of the game, and they are incredibly few and far between. If people just take a step back and just kind of watch the game and realize, it's not the refs aren't having that big of an impact. And I believe Major League Soccer and soccer refs in general are probably some of the better refs in all of sport. I mean, there's other sports where the refs, I think soccer refs are heads and tails above them and how they don't have an impact on the game.
Well, now with VAR, it's really helped to get those key match incidents right too. So, obviously, you just like players, coaches, you're going to have some inexperienced officials who are going to have moments where they need some learning, mistakes. I went through it. I think most players, coaches go through it. So, yeah, I think we do have a really good core of officials here in MLS.
I'll ask another question if you are going to. I'll just keep chatting. How do you not have a bias with players? Because we talk about all the time on this podcast with us. Diego Chara would drive me crazy. He drives me crazy. He seems like an incredibly nice guy, but
and a couple of refs had early triggers on Kyle Beckerman like all the time. Second minute, yellow card, boom. Like he got close to another player, yellow card. So it seemed like there was, but those were the early days of MLS. That doesn't happen now, right, Alan?
No, I don't think you would have a job long if you were just giving out yellow cards for, particular players. Obviously, there are players that are more challenging than others, and sometimes an early yellow card helps manage that. So it depends on the game, the situation. Yeah, Diego, he plays hard. He's obviously been there Portland for a long time. He's done really well. He's always got a smile on his face, even when he's breaking up plays and, but he's never been really disrespectful, kind of a quiet assassin, if you want to call it. Just he with his smile, and doing his job, which is breaking up the play. And so
it's totally irrational on my part. It's just one of those players that just watch him. He's a great player. Probably want to have him on your team, but
exactly.
He seems to get away with more than almost any other player that I watch, and maybe that is because he's just a nice guy.
Yeah, we usually include.
It definitely helps. I think your attitude towards the officials, there's always great decisions. So, if you are a good guy and you have a great decision in a, like I said, game context, and talking to them is going to change their behavior, why not? We don't need to be flashing cars left and right. So,
yeah, we always try to include lessons for youth playing, just in case. There's like 10 youth that I'm sure listen to this podcast. So, we try to throw in a little thing here and there. But that's good insight, Get up smiling and you're less likely to get yellow cards, right?
Help the player up, apologize.
Respect the game, yeah.
There's little, nuances in the game where you can maybe change the referee's mind on, whether it was an accident, intentful or whatever, like, hey, if you go apologize or help a player up, that shows a little bit more respect for the game, and maybe a referee changes his mind from giving you a yellow card to just warning you.
Yeah. Yeah. How does that work with dissent, Alan? Do you have a line where you're like, okay, if someone talks about my mom, it's over. Where does that line happen?
The nice thing is we wear earpiece, right? Because we're on comms. So usually you're only getting information from one side. And sometimes you just can't hear everything. And you're so focused on the next play or what's going around you. Sometimes things are said that you just don't capture because it's just sensory overload. There's so much going on. But yeah, this last couple years, the league has really pushed us to, be stronger on dissent and mobbing. So it's a little bit easier now. Players understand it because, it's been around a couple years now, and every season they're warned about, the points of emphasis, and that's obviously been a points of emphasis for a while. So it's, what they say, who it's about, if it's loud enough, it's public, or if it's just between us, you take all this in consideration, whether you're going to give a card or maybe even a red card, who knows, depending on what level it is. But then we also look at visual dissent, like if someone wants to throw a ball down in frustration, or they're waving their hands at you, or waving your hands at you, very aggressively. So those are definitely situations where you run the risk of getting caution.
What about Hector Herrera, right? Now, I thought that was so crazy. Is that where you were going, Brandt?
Well, I thought about that, but I didn't know. I couldn't remember who the ref that he did that to, so I didn't want to put anybody on the spot. But that wasn't you, Alan.
No,
that was incredibly disrespectful, and we had an incident with one of the players. I
was a fourth official on the game.
So. I really hate phlegm, and you shouldn't be spitting into at anybody. So that, for me personally, that's a hard line. That would be a hard line. But what about mass confrontation? That seems like there was an emphasis a couple of seasons ago, and it's we saw quite a bit more of it last season. Would you like to see that cleaned up some more?
Sometimes you're getting all this information, and you got to understand, and you may need help from your colleagues on the game to kind of see it from the outside. Because sometimes we make decisions, and you expect a little bit of disagreement on some decisions, and how you sell that to the players in the moment, how you communicate with them, hopefully prevent them from coming. Hopefully, if you've studied certain players' tendencies, who's going to come running at you. And so you can immediately just, they're maybe a center back like Tyler. And you just look over and just say, stop, don't even come, So if you're doing your homework, the players that tend to want to pressure you, you can do a better job of preventing the mass confrontation. But it's definitely a point of emphasis. Sometimes we miss it. Sometimes, I don't know, it's there are some decisions where you see something, and then, sometimes after you've made the decision, you're like, did I see that right? And then you're getting some pushback, and you're like, that's where the VAR comes in, if you need it on those big decisions. So,
but does that also undermine your ability to say, no, I saw that, right? You saw that, we saw that, everybody saw that. Does that make you second guess yourself in the moment?
For me, you're trying to find the best angle. The angles matter. Sometimes we see things and we're like, how is that not a foul? And then we see another angle and you're like, yeah, there's no contact, So Um, it's there are moments where for me, it's taking that second to analyze, to make sure I'm not the only one seeing what I just saw. And that comes to maybe in players' reactions and body language. Players' body language, if you study it, there's a lot of similarities on reaction to certain situations. The hands up, like, is one of them, like, oh, I did something wrong, type of thing, or I got him. Is just one example. The body language that a really good official will use, because sometimes we don't have the perfect angle and we don't see all the details, and now we have to use some context clues to hopefully come out with the right decision. And if you study that enough, players' natural reaction will tell you enough information to hopefully get that decision right. So,
Yeah, I love to watch that during the game, because a lot of times the players know who the ball went off of.
mm-hmm.
Especially if it's during the middle of the game. It's not at the end of the game where they're trying to,
Yeah.
Get a score. You just kind of watch the players, and you can just see that, even if you didn't see it. And how much is reffing was with your ears? It seems like there's a lot of listening.
Yeah. You
How
can
does that
hear
come in?
the touch. You can hear, sometimes you don't have to see it. You just hear it. So the body, the reaction of the player, if it's really their ball, they're generally going to go get the ball, or they'll get into position. There are those ones that are very good at selling a decision, and you just have to be on top of your game to make sure you get it right. And you have your colleagues to help you out too. If there's any doubt, they can hopefully help you depending on where they're at. So yeah, it's something I really enjoy studying a little bit. The players and their reactions and their body language. It's helped me in the past to get decisions right. It's funny, I was at RSL for a game, and there was a foul called by the center referee, and the RSL player that committed the foul just moves away, and understands that he committed a foul. And the fan was like, "There's got to be contact, right, ref? There's got to be contact, Allen." And I was like, look at the body language of the player. He's telling you the referee got the decision right. Maybe from where you're sitting, you don't see contact, but the player's body language and their reaction to things will kind of help you see things that you don't see from your angle or where you're sitting.
So,
was that you, Tyler, yelling at me from behind?
Probably.
No, I haven't yelled at a game for a while. I mean, I yell at the TV a lot at home, which is way better, Then it only affects my immediate family, but
Yeah.
no, at the games I
Wife
try
didn't
to.
like that very much. That's why I had to temper that passion.
No, I used to be nuts. Like, there was one game I almost ran on the field, and like my brother grabbed my shoulder and he's like, "What are you doing?" And it was a good thing I was there with my brother, and he's like, "What are you gonna do when you get out there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Nothing.
Lose your rights to ever come to a
I'm
game
not gonna
again.
tackle the ref. The game's over, dude. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right." And after that, I was like, "Man, I got to take this down a notch or two as a fan." So I try not to yell much anymore. Sometimes I'll yell at the goalie, a good joke or two, just to try to get a chuckle out of him. One time we got Eddie Johnson to kind of grab his crotch at us one time, but that was my brother, not me. I didn't say what made Eddie upset.
I might have
but,
to edit this this video, Brandt.
So, are you surprised at how many people don't know the rules, whether that's players or especially fans? Because, I'm not an expert, but I don't even claim to be an expert, but I do appreciate how hard it is to do these jobs and like at the games, maybe just because I'm getting old, but usually I'll say, well, I'll just have to wait until I get home and see the replay and see if it's right, because you don't.
Especially at youth games, right? That's what I always say at youth games. I guess we'll watch the replay and we'll see, guys.
But are you surprised at how many people don't know the rules, or do you have a favorite rule that people always kind of get wrong?
I don't have a favorite, but I'm not surprised. I was one of those individuals coming up, as a player and a coach. I didn't know the laws, so I'm not surprised. So I take confidence in making my decisions and hearing the fans tell me how great a job I'm doing. I kind of thrive off it a little bit. That's the personality I have. Um, if you want to tell me how I'm doing, uh, it, I smile. I feed off of it. And I think just like an opposing player maybe would feed off, the away fans, like getting after them. That's how I take it. So it's fun. Um,
Do you
Obviously,
have a
I have VAR to give me factual information whether I got it right or wrong. So it's yeah. And then I think like it's going back to the players. When you mess up. When you mess up. You can feel it. You can uh you get enough from the players that the fans really doesn't impact you much. So
We were talking to David Gerson from Refs Needs Love Too, whatever that
okay.
TikTok. I don't know if you've seen that.
Uh-huh.
We were talking to him, and he do you have a favorite like thing that someone has said to you that just kind of during a game that just kind of caught you funny and made you laugh? I can't remember what he'd shared one with us, and I can't remember what it was, but there was somebody said, and he just cracked him up. And he remembers it forever. Or do fans just not have an impact, or players not have an impact on?
I wouldn't say they don't have an impact. I think, there's pressure that comes with this job. So yeah, I don't specifically know. I can't remember one, thing that kind of made me laugh. Like, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm so zoned in, so focused on getting the job done that I can't be focusing on hearing things that are just noise. I need to focus on the next play. So yeah, that's just the
So
way
the fans' favorite chant, "Ref you,"
Yeah.
aren't doing so well. That
Actually,
doesn't have any effect. So we can just kind of ask them not to
Ref,
do that
you
anymore
aren't
because
doing so well. Come
I
on,
love
Brett.
it. Means I'm doing something right, I think. So
I always try to turn it into refugees. We're cheering for anyone who's here that's a refugee. Refugees. So I don't know. It doesn't always work, but But hey, Ellen, do you hate turf? Do you hate turf? Do you wish we outlawed it in MLS, or is it not that big a deal?
I don't like it. I think I'm a purist, kind of like I mentioned before. I had strawberries, sliding, slide tackling when I was playing, and yes, the gooey, sticky, type of strawberries where you're laying in bed and you're like, why do I do this? But no, I'm purist. I love grass. Yeah, it's nice when it's rain, like really coming down, and not having to have a a waterlogged pitch. You know, I understand that, especially in the area of Seattle, Portland, where they get a lot of rain, and but there's some really nice grass out there on some of these turfs, in Cincinnati, Columbus, who else? New York Red Bulls got a good turf. So ours
And
has
for
pretty good
some
turf.
reason, we can't get it in the Pacific Northwest, right? Because
I'm sure
doesn't
they can. It's just, I don't know, maybe getting the drainage right,
yeah.
maybe conserving water, all these things I'm sure that come into it. And then you have multiple events, if you have concerts and, other things going on, it's hard to, I know LAFC, sometimes they have so many things going on there, like the, the, the far side where the 5282 is.
Yeah.
That, it's always, they have to sod, bring in new grass. And so they're
Really?
painting it. Yeah. LA Galaxy has some really nice turf too. So
Do you,
that
do,
makes sense to have turf when you have all these other events, I know, where was it? To Vancouver, they had like a rugby tournament and stuff, and there was like, there's turf there, but the rugby players, they make holes to kick, I don't know, goals or
The
whatever
tries.
they call them, the tries.
Whatever they call.
And so you really were walking around the field and you see all these like little holes, so they have to come in and fill them. And if you bounce the ball more than 3 times, it just sticks there and just stays. It doesn't bounce anymore in that same spot. So, yeah, not a fan. Wish it was all grass, but understand that those areas have challenges with whether it's weather or events and so on and so forth. So,
Well, on that same note, Alan, like, we are a young soccer nation. Like, your generation of players hasn't really, I mean, they've played through, but then there's kind of that next generation, the kids of people that grew up playing the sport here. We're still a fairly new soccer nation. What do you think we need as a soccer nation to kind of take us up to that next level?
opportunity, I think probably the biggest thing is, what do they call it? Basically, no paying to play, don't pay to play. We have all these clubs where you have to pay, and so you have a lot of these players that can't afford to play. And so it's a relatively inexpensive sport when you talk about a ball and, I guess you don't need cleats. You can go just play with a ball and some goals, right? Um, so that would be probably one of the issues. I think pay is going to be another one. What drives athletes to want to play a sport usually is money. You look at their heroes and obviously the media, all this, I think selling the sport is a kind of tough. Obviously, trying to get the American fans or American kids to watch the game and fall in love with it. Obviously, having Messi around helps. So yeah, it's complicated. It's very complicated. I wish, I think back in the day where there wasn't free agency and you had, players that grew up in clubs. You look at Europe and they were, for the most part, they lived and died for their club. I think that would be another real advantage to really see kids go through, whether it's academies or other ways or their local teams that they've grown up and watched, and just really have that passion to play for that club. And hopefully over time that'll come to fruition, but time will tell with that. So
Do you have a favorite, back to reffing, do you have a favorite game you've reffed? Favorite
well,
experience?
I have several. Most recently, um last year I had Real Madrid, Barcelona at AT&T Stadium. And it was uh, uh strong sides. They obviously the rivalry, so they put on really their top players. So being able to experience that was cool. The 2 MLS Cups I did was really special. 2017 was probably the most special because your goal is to always try to do a final, and that was my first. And just the emotions that came over me after it was done was just special, knowing all the hard work and all the sacrifice that went into getting to that point.
That was Seattle and Toronto, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
one of those Seattle-Toronto years.
and then I saw them again in 19. It just happened to be in it was in Seattle, same 2 clubs. So that was special too, because my parents were able to come up
Oh,
and
cool.
watch me with my family, and obviously the packed house, 70 something thousand there at Lumen Field. It's special when you can get in front of that many fans in a big event. So
Yeah, those were the 2 years, 17 and 19. You were voted MLS Referee of the Year.
Yep.
And how is that voted? Is that on your peers or is it league wide, or how is that voted on?
It's voted by the media, players, and the coaching staffs. So yeah, no referee vote, just media, players, and the coaching staff.
That's a hard one to
Congratulations.
win, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty hard. Yeah, I was fortunate those 2 years. Some of the best moments when you get that call that you won the referee of the year is pretty cool.
So let's talk about refereeing real quick, or however long it takes. There's a young man.
We talked forever.
He's 22 years old. He's going to college, but he played soccer and he does some reffing. And I keep telling him, dude, keep going, because maybe you could share how it's changed from 2011 or 12 when you started, how refereeing has changed. The league has changed. We've talked to players from the early part of Major League Soccer, and it's a totally different world now. And is it a full-time job? Can it be a full-time job for someone that wants to get started right now? And how would they do that?
Yeah, I highly recommend, especially former players. I think we see the game differently than someone. Obviously, there's some officials that can advance their careers and not have played at a high level, that can make it to the highest level. But the feeling that you have on the field, I think that's what helped me, like understanding players, their temperaments, and just seeing things that may become issues that you may have experienced as a player or you've seen that as a coach. So there's a career out there, and it's a full-time job. It's it's highly demanding as far as the physical work, the travel, but it's way better than going to an office. I think 8 to 5. As much as I'm sure that's draining and hard to do, and I've done it before. I was a full-time referee, and being able to run around with some of the best athletes, best players in the world, is, if you're not on the field playing against them, it's the next best thing. And being in those games that you mentioned that we talked about earlier, that's special. And I wish I would have only started younger, because starting at 30 kind of limited my the window that I had to maybe get to a World Cup or Olympics or whatever. So I would highly recommend players and coaches, to obviously get into it, but get mentors or people surrounding you, or even other friends involved. Because I know, coming up when I was doing youth, being able to referee with guys I enjoyed hanging around made it more enjoyable. It's not just going out there and refereeing and making money. It's more, you have that social part that you get. But then once you start climbing that ladder, then you get that competition, just like a player. You're competing to get that best game, the next game, get it, and potentially get, so.
How would a person get on pros' radar? So they're doing youth games. How do they get on the radar and get on a track that takes them to where you're at?
So each state has an association, a referee association. So you have to get with them and get in contact with the administrators there and ask them, okay, what do I need to do? And this usually means getting involved with the referee academies. I know that Utah has a referee academy. You start to develop and learn, the laws, but also the interpretation, the considerations that you should be aware of, how to better, manage games, all these things, like just improving your game, but then getting you to tournaments where you'll be seen by the right people. And that's what happened with me. Going to youth regionals, there's a bunch of big tournaments out there throughout the United States. You'll be just refereeing, and if you get seen by the right people, your name will, be passed on, and hopefully you'll get invited to tournaments, and as long as you keep, striving to get better and get seen, go travel, you're gonna have to travel a little bit, outside the state. It's possible. It's exciting. If I could sell it, to more individuals, I would love to do that. Whether it's soccer, basketball, like just officiating it by itself is a fun career. You get a lot of travel, you get to see places. You accumulate a lot of miles that you can take your family on vacations and, not have to pay for them. You accumulate the hotel points. So there's a lot of perks. There's the upgrade, there's the diamond status, there's the 360 status. So there's all these things that kind of make it more enjoyable once you get to that level. I would also recommend to not stop playing. Like, I think, especially if you're 22 or something, like, I don't say just give up playing, like continue to play, but have refereeing there to kind of, hopefully, if playing doesn't lead you into where you want to go, refereeing can do that for you.
Are you concerned at all with how refs are treated, especially in the youth levels? We've spoken with, folks at UISA, and we lose a lot of great young refs, before they even get a chance to really have an impact with 14, 15, 16 years old. And they're just like, I just can't take any more abuse. I'm done. This isn't worth it.
Yeah, and even Dunny, when we had him on, he was like, look, I went and sat with the refs for a while. I tried to walk a little bit in their shoes and see what they were all about. And then I go to my son's, youth game, and, we had a connection there too, because one of my coaches coaches with one of his teams, one of his kids. And anyway, so we had him on, and he was talking about that. He's like, I say nothing at those games. He's like, it's not my place. And it's most of the parents not their place either.
Right. No, there's definitely concern. I think Utah Youth has done a great job of no tolerance, giving their referees the ability to, terminate a game if they have to, or get rid of, fans if they have to. So I think Utah's done a great job. It's trying to give the referees the ability, but yeah, it's a tough job. And I would only hope that those individuals that go out there, that they prepare themselves to be, to deal with those moments, but also to be able to officiate the game the best way they can. So too often, I think, sometimes it's about the money, and so they're collecting checks, and they're not understanding that, these teams are out there training multiple days a week. They're, the coaches are out there. So when it comes game time, it's their World Cup, so the passion and all that is going to be there. So you have to be on your game too, as an official. So, and that means I know we are short on referees. So, sometimes you have to limit how many games you do, because if you're overdoing it, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to be tired, you're not going to be servicing the game like it needs to be serviced. So that's the great thing about refereeing, is you can pick and choose when you want to work. As a coach, when I was coaching, it was like I had training, throughout the week, and then my Saturdays and Sundays were just busy, with all the multiple teams. As a referee, I can pick and choose, when I want to work. And I tell the assigner, you know what, I'm taking this weekend off. I'm going to go travel. I need a little break. Or you can say, you know what, I can work 4 games. I don't need to work 6. I don't need to work 8, whatever that is. So be a little bit selfish. If there's not enough referees to fill the games, that's someone else's problem. That might be the clubs. That might be the, Obviously, I know Utah Youth is doing the best to try to recruit. but maybe the coaches and the clubs are going to have to step up, say, you know what, if we're going to make a difference here, we need to get some of our players or parents involved. And I always say, the ones that are chirping, if you really
put that guy in the middle and see what happens.
If you really think you can do a better job, please sign up. Show us, because, we're not going to turn you away. We need referees. So, step up.
Awesome.
What about you're a pro referee? It's your job. What is that process like for game day? How would you take us through the whole process from start to finish? What is your day like as a pro ref?
So just going back, we get our assignments during the regular season, it's like 3.5 weeks in advance because of just how big our country is and the travel, the cost. So we get our assignments pretty early and get our flights booked as quick as possible. But leading up to the game, it's, studying, especially the last match that the two teams played. I like to make sure I know the first names of all the players, especially the starters, because that interaction just makes it so much easier when you're addressing by the first name versus a number. It's a little bit more respectful. I think you actually get more from it. So sitting down, watching the tactics, set pieces, like I mentioned before, the body language of players, maybe how to best manage them. If they're a difficult player, can I deal with them directly, or do I need to, indirectly deal with another player to help me? And then obviously if you have a previous match between the two teams earlier in the year, looking at that match and seeing, what transpired during that match, because if something blew up, you want to make sure that you're ready going into that second game that they play against each other. And then we fly in the day before, try to arrive at a decent hour, because we usually have a game prep workout that we do the day before a match, and getting at a decent hour so we can hit the hotel gym, just to get our bodies flushed out from the flight, but also prepare for the next day.
Allen, kind of jumping in on you, I want you to continue, but I met you in person and you're a very fit guy. So that's another side benefit of being a pro referee, right? Is
you get paid to stay fit instead of paying someone, paying a gym to keep you fit. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of that, I have a fitness test coming up, so I'm hard into it.
What is the fitness test?
What is that?
So we have it's a six sprints that we have to the 40-meter sprints that we have to complete in 6 seconds or less. And so you're in a group of 5 or 6 officials, and we have these gates, electronic gates, that to make sure that you complete it in a timely manner. You have 7 opportunities to complete past 6 of those sprints. If you fail 2 of them, you're done. Your fitness test is a fail. So 40 meters, 6 seconds. This is for referees. It's a little bit different for assistant referees. There's a little recovery time, and then we get into an interval test where we run 75 meters in 15 seconds. And then we have 18 seconds to cover 25 meters. So you're talking 100 meters intervals. And then you do that 40 times. And there's gates after your 75 meter hard run, sprint, whatever you want to call it. Your foot has to be in that gate in order for you to be considered to pass that interval. So if you have 2 warnings, if after 2 warnings you don't complete, you're done. So yeah, 40 intervals of that, and that's the fitness test.
Are you done for the year, or
no? They'll give you one more, depending on if you get injured during it, then you might have 2 opportunities. If you technically, the collective bargaining agreement, if you fail one, I believe if you fail a second time, you can be done, depending on the situation. So, yeah.
Wait, wasn't there a guy named like Petricu or that was just a big dude? Was he passing that test the whole time? Or was it different back then?
You're talking about Silvio Petrescu.
Silvio Petrescu, that's right. Yeah.
I love Silvio. Yeah, he's fit.
Yeah.
For a guy, he was fit.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I thought you were talking about like Alex Bruce. I don't remember if you Alex Bruce, but
Oh yeah,
the fitness test back then was totally different than it is now. And I don't think they probably had a blind eye to how fast he ran, but no, Silvio was fit.
Now it's electronic, and you can't get away from it, right? Okay,
right.
But Silvio can do it. He can hit those.
That guy can move.
All right.
So going back to just finish up on my game day. The next morning, just relaxing, maybe watching some. I love to watch some English Premier League Saturday morning. Get up wherever I'm at and just kind of get in the mood, the flow of decision making and just thought process and thinking through the match. I love the flow of the English Premier League, and I'm like, if we can just get the excitement like that at our match that night, that's the goal. Let the game flow if we can. But yeah, then we usually meet up for lunch as a crew, have a discussion, and then we get to the stadium either 2 hours or an hour and a half before the match. And then we do a field inspection, make sure the goals and the field is met the requirements. We check.
That's when Brandt gets to the games too. He's usually 2.5 hours early. Yeah.
And outside the stadium. When did they open the gates? 1 hour before? Or?
He goes in the press entrance.
We've been fortunate the last couple of years to get press passes, so
nice.
I like to be there early.
Yeah, cool.
Anyway, but no, there was an issue
we need. We love when
there was an issue a little bit ago when I think it was Houston. Was it Houston? Anyway, somebody was like, the RSL goal was like a 1/4 inch off. And then they had to pull the goal out and then bring in the practice goal and weight the goal down. And it was a whole thing. And I was like tweeting it about it pregame, and nobody seemed to care. I'm like, no, this is kind of a big deal, guys. Anyway, it ended up not being a big deal.
This the story after that. The league required us to bring measuring tapes out after that incident.
Really?
Every match, we had the ops had to bring out a measuring tape and make sure the measurements are correct.
Really?
Even on goals where it was permanently made, like on these artificial turfs where they roll them out and they're manufacturally made to be 8 feet high. Like, do we really need to measure a manufactured? It's not in the ground.
That's crazy.
So ever since that, we have to bring out a measuring tape.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time on that pregame, and I think we even kicked off like 7 minutes late or something because of it. Yeah, that was crazy. Anyway, so carry on. So back to the
just we get there 2 hour and a half before, check the field, make sure the comms are working. Now that we have in stadium announcements, we got to make sure that's working. And then we get in the locker room, we start getting dressed. 1 hour before, we have our captain meeting. I guess it's more of a roster exchange. Make sure that the rosters, both clubs have submitted it, and then the game director, match director, is there just to make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted, so we can make sure.
Is he the pro?
No, he's
liaison or the match, the MLS
match
guy?
director, which is the league representative. Make sure the rosters are there. Make sure there's no issues. And then we get back into the locker room and we have a pregame, and it's just discussion about the clubs, about situations, how we're gonna handle certain situations. communication that we want to use at certain moments. It's pretty detailed at that point. And then we get out and we do our warm up, and after our warm up, we're back in and we're ready to go. After the game, it's, eating our meal and headed back to the hotel and getting ready for our flight the next day. So it's sometimes less than 48 hours, depending on when you arrive into a city. And then depending on what time you get a flight out the next day. So it's pretty quick, relatively speaking.
Now, do you get recognized? Do people like come up and talk to you? Like, hey, I noticed you were in the match last night. Do they ever give you a grief, or like, does that happen much?
Not much. It happens rarely, but it does. Yeah, I've had it happen a few times, and it's been pretty positive. I haven't had any bad experiences.
Yeah, was it 2 years ago where there was the British referee that went for a Champions League game and then he got almost jumped in the airport, right?
Oh,
Him
yeah.
and his family kind of got attacked. I
Yeah.
was like, man, this is messed up. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Game's over. I
Yeah.
don't know if you knew that.
Back in the day when we did commercial flights with teams, there's some issues there sometimes.
Oh, yeah, they want to chat about it.
You're on the same flight with them going home, depending on.
So are you commercial or are you charter as well?
No, we're commercial.
But the teams are charter.
Charter now, yeah.
They got them out of your hair.
Yeah, well, they eventually figured out they needed to know what flights the teams were on, and then they would book us on a different flight if they knew back in the day. So I did have a flight coming home from Toronto with RSL, and sat next to Kyle for 4 hours.
Talk about fly fishing and stuff.
It was pretty quiet. It was a quiet trip. I think I called it a penalty against RSL, and maybe a second yellow red card against somebody. I don't remember. But I remember the flight, sitting next to him, and it was pretty quiet.
No, he didn't like He didn't like want to talk about the whole thing. He was just like,
it's funny because that back some of the traveling fans would fly with them, right, on the same flight.
yeah.
And you literally had fans going up to the restroom and taking photos of us sitting next to each other. I think that was the last straw as far as us flying on the same flight as
Right.
Yeah.
Pros like, that's it. We can't have this anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure someone said something from RSL, or who knows. I'm sure there was other incidents too.
Right.
So,
I got one last question. I love watching the games, but I do love refs. And I like to watch the refs. And I want, as a fan, watching the game, watching the refs, what should they know? Where should you, where's the best positioning for you? Like, how can they watch and say, hey, you know what, that guy's right where he needs to be. He's in the game. He's not in the way. Is there anything that you could share about kind of like where you want to be on the pitch and what fans would be recognized and say, hey, that guy, that gal is right where they need to be?
yeah, as far as seeing contact or fouls, like trying to see between players, angle between them, not being blocked by the other players or the players involved in the situation. But obviously you don't want to get hit by balls too. So a really good referee can almost anticipate play, and they're moving before the ball even goes. There's always these little clues that players give you as far as where they're potentially going to play the ball. And it's usually that glance up and then they're glancing down back to the ball, and you should be already going, type of thing. So, particularly, as far as distance from play, somewhere between, 15, 20 yards or so from play, that you're not right on top of it. There are moments where you want to get tighter just to use your voice or your presence to diffuse potential situations. So if they get in tighter, usually we have some areas around the technical area where things can get, if you have a flashpoint, we call it flashpoint, where you're there, versus arriving, later and not being able to diffuse something. So, but you also, you want to be in the camera shot. If you're watching on TV and you don't see a referee, that can be an issue. But I don't particularly like officials that are so thinking that, oh, I got to be in the camera and not worrying about what's happening in front of them. Like they're so concerned about appearance and, all these things, which is fine. But ultimately just being close enough to play to see between the players and see, the situation that's presented in front of you. But are they reactive? If they're reactive, then they're behind play. If they're proactive and they're reading the play and getting there before the ball arrives, that's ultimately a really good official as far as position. And usually we work obviously with our assistant referees, and having them in our view is helpful. So usually we have a diagonal where we run, from left to right, or, we always want to have our assistant referee, the lead, if play's going towards one goal, the lead assistant referee in our view. So that's also important to try to keep the players between the assistant referee and yourself is generally a good practice. It's not always necessary, but generally that's a good practice as far as positioning for referees.
And then my last question is there a best place on the field to really get away with a foul? Is it the opposite end of the line of the ARs, right?
So it's going to be in that corner, probably where the assistant referee is not. So the referee,
so the right backs are much more likely to get away with
or
stuff.
a forward going into that space with whether it's a center back or something like that, right? Especially the holding, and depending on where they're, potentially holding. Like if they're holding up in front, I'm not going to be able to see that from behind. So yeah, that would be probably the area I would say is more challenging.
Good advice, Tyler. Good advice.
I'm here for him.
I'll tell you what, like every club should have a former referee to help guide teams in certain situations, and talking through laws and situations like this. Like, okay, how can I maybe get away with something, and is this the right area to try that? Is this the right situation to try it? You talked about the offside, just training players to maybe understand that potentially being in front of goal could be, you could disallow a really good goal, and make sure that you're working your way back or away from the goal in those moments, so to hopefully not disallow a goal,
Good point.
So
or
do you
even be in an offside position? You can be in an offside position all day long. Like I would do, like put a center forward in an offside position, just play the ball down the wings. And now the defenders are trailing. If you got a good outside mid or whatever, and they won that ball, that forward's now by himself. As long as the ball is played, square or negative, he's no longer offside. So you have some forwards that understand. I think Joseph Martinez was really good at that with Atlanta, where he just kind of hovered behind the center backs. And obviously they have to be aware of him. They're trying to push up to put him in an offside position. But as long as the ball's not played to him, it's played to one of his teammates, then they slot it back, and it's like one-on-one with the goalie. So,
yeah, the way that rule changed from when you were a kid growing up, right?
Yeah, everything was offside. Like you were just in offside position.
Yeah.
Last question for me. Do you have a favorite ref? Is there anybody that really stands out that you want to model yourself after, or someone that had an effect on you?
Howard was probably one of those officials. Howard Webb, obviously watching English Premier League and just the way he managed games and players. He had big big games, big moments, and he seemed to be on it. He understood the context of each match. He understood the players. He had the feeling of the match, and I think he would probably be up there as far as the referees that I like to emulate. So, yeah.
Cool. And he ended up being the head guy for MLS, and now he's back in the Premier League, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
He's got his hands full, but he's probably the right guy to be there. So,
Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Hopefully, we able to help fans understand a little bit more about what it is to be a pro ref, and hopefully have a lot more respect for what you do. I know I'm a huge ref lover. I appreciate what you do for the game, and wish I hadn't been born so early, way back in the 1900s, because being an MLS ref would be quite the job.
yeah. Yeah. And then if they want to come running with me, they want to get on the pitch, try to stay up with me, let's go. I want to.
I have no doubts. You said 6 seconds, 40. I'm out.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so
Yeah.
much, Alan. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I hope it's just a shout out to Sean Corridge,
Okay. Yeah,
your
yeah.
cousin.
Yeah.
He
No,
said he'd
that's
be
how
watching. Said he'd be watching. So yeah, it's a shout out to
we'll see
him.
if he watched to the end.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Thanks so
Thanks for
much.
having me, guys. I appreciate it. All the best, and hopefully it was helpful and insightful. Have you had just one question for me? Did you have any other referee before me?
You're the first pro ref. We
Okay.
did have
We had
Yeah,
a couple high school refs, and then we
Okay.
had the other guy that was he's done tournaments and
Okay.
college games and stuff like that. But you're the
He's
first
David
pro for sure.
Pearson, ref needs love too. He's got a big
Yeah.
TikTok and he reviews.
Controversial plays and stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, we'd love to have more. We'd love to have you on again too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Well, I could probably help you out if there's one specific, there's probably some really good ones that you probably might want to get on eventually. So,
Nice.
especially World Cup officials.
yeah. If you can help us with that, that'd be awesome.
We'll get Elfat on. That'd be
If
awesome.
not, or we get Pinzo, Tori on here, that would be cool.
That'd
So
be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
cool, man. You guys have a good night.